The world often imagines the Vikings as fearless warriors with horned helmets, sailing their longships through stormy seas to raid villages and towns. These Norsemen, who lived between the late 8th and early 11th centuries, became famous for their raids across Europe. From the British Isles to the coasts of France, Spain, and even parts of the Middle East, their presence was both feared and legendary. But behind the stories of fire, swords, and treasure, there's a quieter, darker history, one that involves the lives of many women who were captured during these raids. This story isn't just about battles or warriors, it's about what really happened to the women who were taken away from their homes, women whose names were never written in the history books. Some were young, some old, some came from wealthy families, others from humble villages, but all shared one fate. Their lives were changed forever when Viking ships arrived on their shores. In this video, we'll explore the untold side of Viking history, the experiences of captured women, the reasons they were taken, what their lives were like afterward, and how their presence shaped Viking society. This is not just a story about the past, it's a story about power, survival, and the hidden human cost of war. The age of Viking raids. The Viking Age began around the year 793 CE, when raiders attacked a Christian monastery at Lindisfarne, an island off the coast of Northumbria in England. This brutal event sent shockwaves across Europe. It was the beginning of a new era, one where Viking warriors became the terror of coastal towns and monasteries. Vikings were not just raiders, they were traders, explorers, and settlers too. But their raids became infamous because they often struck places that were poorly defended. Monasteries, for example, had wealth in the form of gold, silver, and sacred objects, but they also had people. Women living near these places, nuns, villagers, wives, and daughters, became targets. To the Vikings, taking captives was not just an act of cruelty. It was also practical. Women could be used in different ways, as servants, as wives, as workers, or as people who could be sold for silver in distant markets. Captives were part of the booty of war, just like gold, livestock, or other valuables. Who were the women captured? During Viking raids, not everyone was captured at random. Raiders often targeted specific groups of women. In coastal towns and monasteries, they looked for young women, especially those who seemed healthy or came from important families. Wealthy families could be forced to pay ransom to get their loved ones back. Poorer women, on the other hand, were more likely to be enslaved permanently. In some cases, entire villages were taken. Women of different ages were marched toward Viking ships, often after their homes were burned or their communities were destroyed. Many of these women had no idea where they were being taken or what their future would hold. They didn't speak the same language as their captors. They had no power. The women came from many different regions: England, Ireland, Scotland, Francia, modern-day France, and even the Slavic lands of Eastern Europe. Their experiences varied, but one thing remained constant: their freedom was taken from them. The journey on Viking ships. Imagine being taken from your home, tied with ropes or guarded by armed men, and forced onto a narrow wooden ship. Viking longships were fast and light, built to move quickly across seas and rivers. But for the women being transported, these ships felt like floating prisons. The journey could take days or even weeks. The captives had little food, almost no space, and no idea where they were headed. Some women tried to escape, others became sick or weak from the harsh conditions. Many were traumatized not only by the violence they had witnessed, but by the uncertainty of their future. The Vikings themselves were focused on reaching home quickly. They valued their captives as part of their plunder. Losing them at sea would mean losing profit, so while they did not necessarily treat them kindly, they often kept them alive to sell, ransom, or use later. Viking slavery system. Thralls. Viking society was built on a class system. At the bottom were the thralls, slaves. Captured women often became thralls upon arrival. In Norse law, thralls were considered property, not people with rights. A free Viking could buy, sell, or give away a thrall as they wished. Thralls worked in many roles: on farms, in households, in kitchens, or as labourers. Women were often given domestic duties: cooking, cleaning, weaving, and taking care of children. In some cases, they worked alongside free women, but they were always at the bottom of society. The Viking economy depended on slavery. Captives from raids were taken back to Scandinavia or sold in slave markets across Europe. Ransom and negotiation. Not all captured women ended up as slaves forever. If a woman came from a wealthy or noble family, her captors might demand ransom. This was especially common with women from monasteries or royal households. A ransom could include silver, gold, or even land. Vikings were skilled negotiators. They knew how much a person was worth and often waited for months to receive payment. If the ransom was paid, the woman could be returned home. But many families could not afford such a high price. In those cases, the woman remained in captivity. Ransom also became a form of strategy. By taking important people, Vikings could avoid fighting larger armies and still make a profit. Life in Viking households. For women who were not ransomed, life as a thrall or concubine in a Viking household varied greatly. Some were treated cruelly, forced to work long hours with no rest. Others found themselves living in a kind of uneasy stability, doing housework, weaving cloth, and raising children. The Viking longhouse was the center of domestic life. It was crowded, smoky, and busy. Women, both free and enslaved, played a major role in running these households. Enslaved women had no legal power, but their labor was essential to the functioning of Viking farms and homes. Some captured women were taken as concubines by their captors. This was not uncommon in Viking society. A powerful man could have a wife and also keep concubines. Children born from these unions were sometimes accepted into the household, though they did not have the same rights as children of the main wife. Viking women and power dynamics. Viking society gave more rights to free women than many other cultures of the time. Free Norse women could own property, ask for divorce, and manage households, but captured women did not share these rights. They existed in a world where their lives were controlled by others. However, history also shows that some enslaved women slowly gained influence over time. If they bore children to their captors or became trusted in the household, their status could improve. In rare cases, they were freed and married into Viking society. This complicated relationship between free and enslaved women reveals how power worked in the Viking world. Women could hold power, but only if they were free. Cultural assimilation and identity loss. For many captured women, years of living in a new land changed their language, culture, and identity. A woman taken from Ireland might eventually speak Old Norse. Her children would grow up as Vikings. Over time, her old identity could fade. Some women were forced to convert to the Norse religion, others adapted to survive. Living far from home, many captives had no chance to return. Their names were forgotten by history, and their lives became part of the fabric of Viking society. This is one of the most painful parts of their story, the quiet erasure of their past. Slave markets and global trade. The Viking Age was not just about raiding, it was also about trading. The Vikings were connected to trade routes stretching from the North Atlantic to the Middle East. Captured women were often taken to markets in Dublin, York, and Scandinavia. Some were even sold in Constantinople. The slave trade was big business. A young, healthy woman could be sold for silver, weapons, or other goods. Some ended up working in wealthy households in foreign lands. Others were transported even further east into slave networks that connected to the Islamic world. Escape and resistance. Not all captured women accepted their fate. Some tried to escape during raids on ships or after arriving in Viking lands. Though difficult, a few succeeded. Historical records and sagas tell stories of captives who fled and returned home, or were rescued by their families. Others resisted in quieter ways, refusing to give up their faith, holding on to their native language, or secretly teaching their children about their past. Even in bondage, these acts of resistance helped keep their identities alive. The Viking world was harsh, but human strength and hope often burned quietly beneath the surface. Stories from the sagas. Viking sagas, though often written centuries after the events, offer glimpses into the lives of captured women. One example comes from Laxdæla saga, where an Irish woman named Melkorka is captured and sold as a slave in Iceland. She cannot speak the language at first, but later her true identity as an Irish princess is revealed. Her story is fictionalized, but it reflects real patterns. Women taken from foreign lands, their identities hidden, their lives reshaped in Norse society. Some sagas romanticize these events, but the reality behind them was often painful and complex. Archaeological evidence. Modern archaeology has revealed much about Viking raids and slavery. Graves in Scandinavia sometimes contain foreign women buried alongside their captors. DNA studies show genetic links between Norse populations and the British Isles, Ireland, and Slavic regions. Artifacts like shackles, chains, and trade records give us clues about the scale of the Viking slave trade. These discoveries help us understand that captured women were not a small part of Viking history. They were a central part of it. Religion and ritual. Vikings followed the Norse pagan religion, worshipping gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya. Some captured women were forced to take part in Norse rituals, while others were sacrificed in religious ceremonies. One of the most disturbing accounts comes from Ahmad ibn Fadlan, an Arab traveller who wrote about a Viking funeral he witnessed on the Volga River. In his account, an enslaved woman was killed to accompany her master into the afterlife. Though this may not have been common everywhere, it shows the brutal side of Viking ritual life, where captives could be treated as offerings. The Viking Age is often remembered for its daring raids, its warriors, and its ships slicing through the misty seas. But the real story is far more complex. It's a story not only of conquest but also of loss, survival, and silent endurance. When we speak of Vikings, we should remember not just the men who raided and conquered, but also the women whose lives were forever changed. Their voices may have been silenced then, but they can be heard now. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your love and support is very much appreciated. See you in the next video.